you're from. With that, we'll go ahead and pass it off to Devin to tell us who our speakers are for the night and what we're gonna learn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Devin. I use they, them pronouns. I'm also a farming and environment organizer with CCI. We've got 7 whole CCI members talking about their experiences tonight. So you'll hear about stories about fighting factory farms. You'll learn some information about factory farms and their impacts on Iowa and our environment. And then you'll also learn some strategies and tools that you can use to build power in your communities. We'll also provide history and context, and we'll also have a Q&A in case we miss anything. So with that, I'll pass it off to Barb to get us started.
I had to unmute. Hi, my name is Barb Kaba. I'm a 4th generation family farmer from Adair County, about 45 miles west of Des Moines. I am a longtime member of Iowa CCI, and it was the factory farms that brought me knocking at their door. But let me start at the beginning. You may be wondering, what is a factory farm? What is a CAFO? Well, a CAFO is a factory farm, and CAFO stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation. It is a system of raising livestock using intensive methods by which poultry, pigs, or cattle are tightly confined indoors under strictly controlled conditions. My husband and I have farmed for 50 years, and for 25 of those years, there were no factory farms. Farmers had diverse operations growing corn, beans, oats, alfalfa for hay, beef cattle, some maybe dairy cattle, chickens, and hogs. This diversity helps spread our monetary risk so that if one thing wasn't bringing a good income, some of the others might be. We raised hogs in our operation, from baby pigs right up to market weight. When we had some pigs ready to go to market, we were able to call a variety of what they called buying stations in our area. Each buying station was about 20 miles away, and they would give you a bid for your hogs. You could pick your best price and haul your hogs to that buying station. They would pay you, and then they would turn around and call packing plants to find a good bid for the hogs. That is what you call a free and competitive market. But in 1995, the Iowa legislature passed a bill called House File 519. It allowed for the establishment of the factory farm business model in the state of Iowa. The big, long, white buildings you see across Iowa's countryside are factory farms. Factory farms are measured in what they call animal units. 1 beef cow is 1 animal unit. It takes 2.5 hogs to equal 1 animal unit. An operation under 1,250 head of hogs is 500 animal units and is considered a SAFO, S-A-F-O, or small animal feeding operation. This is kind of a misnomer because 1,250 hogs shoulder to shoulder packed in a building is not a small family farm. These operations fly under the radar. They are not included in the number of factory farms that the DNR oversees, and they only have to follow minimum setback requirements. For example, 1,250 feet from a house, which are weak at best. Buildings that hold between 1,250 and 2,499 head of hogs must submit a manure management plan to the DNR, and that's it. Buildings that hold more than 2,499 head of hogs require a manure management plan and a construction permit. A manure management plan is submitted to the state by the producer, and it is to verify where the manure generated by the operation will be applied. The floors of factory farm buildings are slatted, and the manure produced is collected in a pit underneath the slatted floor. Every fall, these pits are emptied of liquid manure, and it is spread on surrounding farm fields that were identified in the manure management plan. You are not to spread liquid manure on frozen ground. though this is often overlooked because, as you may understand, when the pit is full, it is full. There are 28 million head of hogs raised in these buildings every year across the state. They produce 22 billion gallons, yes, billion gallons of liquid manure that is deposited on farm fields every year. Just visualize that. Liquid manure just waiting for a little rain to move it down the hill and into the closest waterway or creek or river. And on this map, where you see the red dots and the green dots identifying where factory farms are, every one of them has a manure management plan with a whole bunch of acres that get the 30 or the 22 billion gallons put on it. So it's kind of hard to comprehend. But factory farms are one of the main reasons that Iowa's waterways have become so polluted. In 2002, there were 212 impaired waterways in Iowa. Today, there are more than 750. The only thing that I, as a farmer, know of that has increased in Iowa at that pace, is the factory farm industry. Now, you may wonder how farmers like us were impacted by the corporatization of the hog sector. Well, very few farmers like us raise pigs on the scale that we used to. That stream of revenue that we used to have is gone. There are no more buying stations. If I wanted to sell a small number of hogs, I would have to haul them a great distance to the nearest packing plant and receive a discounted price for them. Many of the sale barns small towns used to have are now gone, and so is the option of selling hogs there. And so if you don't have a factory farm system on your farm, you just don't raise hogs. What are the communities that host these factory farms, you may wonder? Well, their streams, lakes, and rivers are easily contaminated with waste. There are fish kills. The air is polluted and not only stinks, but often carries antibiotic particles in it. If you are a neighbor with upper respiratory problems, you may suffer increased health problems. If a factory farm builds nearby, your property may decrease in value and you may be unable to sell it. Nearby outdoor venues will lose value as people fear to rent them for events due to not knowing if the air is going to stink or not. And who would seek an acreage to build a new retirement home on around those factory farms? Factory farms are vertically integrated and supply their own feed, veterinarians, and livestock supplies. Therefore, the businesses in nearby small towns are no longer needed as they were for individual livestock producers, and those businesses close. To top it off, factory farms add no new revenue to the property tax income of a county. So a $5 million factory farm can build in your county, and your county receives no new revenue. The factory farm industry endangers our food supply. During COVID, Smithfield Foods could not kill and butcher their normal 20,000 hogs per day due to worker shortages. So those 20,000 hogs had to be euthanized every day because baby pigs were waiting in the wings to take their place. As hogs were euthanized, you watched your prices increase at the grocery store, and there were no other sources to turn to for a large number of hogs. The big players in the factory farm industry, like Bruce Rassetter of Summit Ag and Jeff Hansen of Iowa Select, and organizations such as the Iowa Pork Producers and Iowa Farm Bureau, use their power and their influence to lobby our legislature and have laws made in their favor. A recent example is the Ag Gag Law. Another was the Master Matrix, to supposedly help factory farmers work well with their neighbors. Well, if you live near a factory farm, you probably have not noticed much benefit from the Master Matrix. I became a member of Iowa CCI when a man came from 60 miles away to build a factory farm housing 7,200 breeding stock, 1,975 feet from our house. We and our neighbors fought back, and at the end of a 10-month battle, we stopped that factory farm. Our effort was tremendous, and we had Iowa CCI to help us. An organizer named Lisa Whalen, who is on this call, worked with us, and she helped us figure out next steps as we went along. But we, the people, did the work. CCI did not do the work for us. To stop this factory farm, we thought of every possibility and then implemented it. We met weekly at our little country church to plan. We spoke at and attended board supervisor meetings. We held community information meetings. We passed around petitions in our county and surrounding counties and ended up with over 6,000 signatures. We had local hearings with our elected state senators and representatives. Our hired man lived in a trailer way too close to the site. We calculated the slope, soil type, and conservation patterns of selected manure management fields and protested that their slope was too steep and not enough waterways were there to be used properly. Manure management acres were counted inaccurately, and we brought this to DNR's attention. If anything, we slowed the perpetrator down as he had to correct everything we found before he could move forward. One night, a neighbor called, "Barb, I have a great idea. Let's get all the farmers in a 10-mile radius to sign a document stating he will refuse to apply manure on any of his farm ground." Well, I was tired and weary, like Edith knows, by then, and I thought, it'll never work. But I said, okay, we'll do it. And we did. Every farmer in a 10-mile radius signed that document. But after a 9-month fight, the DNR issued a building permit. We had one last option, to appeal to the Environmental Protection Commission. So we did. On the day of the hearing, our people filled the auditorium at the Wallace Building by the Capitol in Des Moines. Our county attorney represented us. The perpetrator was there with his bankers and a few lawyers. The commission listened to each side's presentation. In the end, the fact that all the farmers in a 10-mile radius were refusing to take manure was the thing that caused the commission to vote 5-4 to overturn the DNR's permit to build. After 10 long months, our community had won. Today, we still have big 4x8 signs posted around Adair County, like you see in this picture, saying family farms yes, factory farms no, just to remind them that we will fight if they try to move into our county. And that is why 20 years later, I'm working through Iowa CCI to help others stop factory farms and support family farms around our state. It is a job that will take all of us.
Thank you so much, Barb.
Yeah, and would Edith like to take over?
Yes. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Edith Henel, and I live in Worth County, which is right upon the Minnesota-Iowa border, just off of, well, it straddles Interstate 35. Oh, I've had kind of a long day, and you'll hear some of it as I go along here. So please forgive me if I'm having to repeat myself or stop or can't think. But, you know, when you think about how CAFOs affect, all you have to do is look around everywhere. I mean, CAFOs affect everything in your site. They affect the wetlands, they affect grass, they affect the school, they affect road maintenance, they affect lost tax revenues, they affect decreased property values. They, you know, lose businesses, people leave the county, therefore the schools don't have enough kids, and so schools have to consolidate. You know, to say nothing of the pollution of the air, the water, the soil. We don't really have soil so much in Iowa. We have dirt, and soil is full of living organisms. But when there's over-application and misapplication, the living organisms in the soil are killed and they become dirt. And of course, you know, dirt is way less significant, way less, you know, productive than soil is. And as many of us know that all of that runoff, well, some of you may not know, but several years ago, Des Moines Waterworks, and those of you who remember that there were other people signed on, you know, did a lawsuit because Iowa really promotes or is a big player in the dead zone down in the Gulf of Mexico, and that they wanted to talk about the downstream effects of all of these chemicals that Iowa perpetrates all the way down the river. And of course, they lost with legislators who are anti-CAFOs saying that no, it was the golf courses. Even one legislator said, well, it's the geese releasing, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of fancy dancing by politicians because there's a lot of money, as all of you well know, in the ag industry. You know, people in the ag industry like to say that Iowa feeds the world. That is just not true. But Iowa does pollute a lot of the world. And, you know, other ways that factory farms affect us is hogs in factory farms are given a lot of antibiotics because when the hogs are given those antibiotics, they gain weight much faster. And so those antibiotics are leached into the soil. And you talk to pharmacists who are who are anti-CAFO, they're very concerned about superbugs. So as all of you have heard, there's a real fear that there won't be enough antibiotics, or antibiotics are going to not work to protect humans. 87% of all antibiotics used in this country and perhaps in other countries, 87% are used in the hog industry. 13% of antibiotics are used for humans. So you can begin to see that the hog industry has a huge effect on health in a lot of ways, upper respiratory diseases, the health of the workers. People have died because of the gases emitted from CAFOs, ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, methane, all kinds of things. Children, oh, this is my big deal. I love working with children. That was my before I retired. These gases are heavy, so they are lower to the ground, and children are lower to the ground. Children run more, they breathe more, they drink more. And so they are actually taking in more of these toxic gases. So kids that live near CAFOs have a 55% higher chance of having asthma, as well as other respiratory difficulties. I could go on and on. I mean, I'm kind of like a proselytizer in that, you know, it just goes on and on. One of the things that has happened in our county, one of the big players in this, Jeff Brackey, has bought 39 parcels of land in Worth County. And, you know, they prey on people who are dying, are old, and their kids don't want to come into Iowa. So there's a lot of corporate holding of land. And so, you know, it begins to get kind of overwhelming. People feel like they don't have power, that the corporate people have a lot of power. They do have a lot of power, but we have to remember we have a lot of power. And, you know, even dictatorships rule at the pleasure or power of the people. And so our work is very, very important because the power of the people can overwhelm these things, even though maybe it won't be in my lifetime. I kind of figure that's probably true. But anyway, And to say nothing about the poor hogs, I can't even think about them. You know, there's a CAFO a mile from my house, and I just can't hardly even think about the hogs. I give them loving kindness meditations, but it's very painful to think about them. The big act put pro CAFO children's books in all of the elementary libraries in Iowa. So I wrote a children's story that's anti-CAFO. I mean, it needs a lot of editing, but it's sort of hard not. It's not as in all parts. It's not a children's story, but anyway, just look around. CAFOs affect everything about your rural community. One other thing about rural communities is research says is the longest lasting effect of CAFOs is the way it divides communities. And they also say, even after the CAFOs are gone, that the communities don't heal. And that happened in our neighborhood. The church split because of the issue over CAFOs, and families who've been friends for 150 years have split. And those are not, those relationships are not repaired or very anxiously repaired. So tons and tons of, we need to fight. We need to fight because it's changing Iowa. Okay, I'm a fast talker. Did I do it under my time? So, or not? Did I go over?
Oh, you're perfect.
All right, I think I'm supposed to pass it on to Maddie and Carrie.
Correct.
Hi, thank you to everyone for being here. My name is Carrie Linkenmeyer, and my sister Maddie and I are here to talk about our experience with trying to stop a hog confinement from being built in our childhood neighborhood. So the image you're seeing on the screen right now is the view from our parents' porch. We are originally from Howard County, Iowa, which borders Minnesota in the northeast corner of Iowa. And both sides of our family have farmed in that county for generations, our dad's side extending all the way back to the pioneer days. Both our parents' home is about a mile down the road is the family farm, and our cousin lives in that neighborhood as well. We have a large extended family that still regularly visit. And one of the reasons that so many of our families still visit, although most of us have moved from the area. And on the next slide is a picture of our grandfather and grandmother, who set aside 14 acres of their farm in the 1970s to build a family pond. That's on the right side there. Just a gathering place that we refer to as Babe's Pond after our grandfather. So Babe passed away unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm at the age of 50 in 1978. But this pond he built remains as his legacy. Our family has enjoyed it for 4 decades now, fishing, camping, swimming, picnicking. And when Babe passed away, our dad, Richard, was a junior in high school. And that year, the whole neighborhood came together to help our family bring in the harvest and supported our family through a very tough time. Our dad still farms those same acres today. And all this is just to say that our neighborhood means a lot to us. Our neighbors mean a lot to us. Certainly the pond means a lot to us, and Howard County means a lot to us. So the next slide is another picture of our pond, I believe. And one of those neighbors, a longtime family friends and family farmers as well, recently passed, and their kids, not being farmers, decided to put the land and the acreage up for public auction this summer. Many of our family members and neighbors attended the auction, several of them with hopes of purchasing the farmland themselves so they could expand their adjacent crop operations. But a bidder on behalf of Iowa Select Farms was the ultimate winning bidder that day. So that day we did get new neighbors in that family's acreage, but we also got new neighbors in Jeff and Deb Hansen of West Des Moines, Iowa. So for those who don't know, Jeff and Deb are the owners of Iowa Select Farms, the largest pork producer in Iowa and the 4th largest in the nation. So naturally, we began to wonder, what are their plans for this small farm that once belonged to our neighbors? And the next slide kind of gives some context to why. So why? Because Howard County has a great number of these larger animal confinements. These pins all show confinements large enough to require a manure management plan. So at least 1,200, I believe, hogs. So Howard County is 473 square miles, and there's 142 of these large hog confinements. So this doesn't represent all the hogs, but there is one of these for nearly every 3 square miles. And they represent 500,000 hogs, but also a lot of manure being produced in this county. So Maddie is next. She's going to talk about if you find yourself in this situation, how can you find out what's next and what you can do about it?
Thank you. So you can go to the next slide too. You should be able to enjoy your property in rural Iowa, what you work so hard for, what you grew up, what your family, what you inherited. And we already deal with the smell of manure from livestock operations in the area. We've got 4,000 cattle a half mile north of us already. And then the trucks that come along with that, the road damage from those trucks, the dust, and the algae filled water. Our pond that we showed earlier, it's often just covered in algae from runoff. So we are very concerned about another confinement. And after the auction where Iowa Select Farms bought the land, that's really when we started this massive project about CAFOs and the process in Iowa. We made lots of calls to our county, the Iowa DNR, and this is also when we started working with Iowa CCI and also SRAP, which is the Socially Responsible Agriculture Project. So those two groups have been incredibly helpful. About a month into this whole research project, we got some paperwork from the DNR that showed Iowa Select Farms had submitted it's called a floodplain declaratory order. What that means is that's just Iowa Select Farms asking the DNR, hey, is our proposed location in a 100-year floodplain or not? You can go to the next slide here. And so on this paperwork, it's a public document. This is where we learned what Iowa Select Farms was planning. So they didn't reach out to us or anything. And we learned the size of the facility, the exact location right there on the map too, you can see. And then Iowa Select Farms on this public document had also named the confinement after the family that previously owned the land, which made this family very upset because they didn't have anything to do with the confinement, nor did they want their name on a hog confinement. So once we got this paperwork, it was time to act and act quickly. We took off that week from work and we just focused on this. It's when we started outreach with our neighbors, and we also started just calling Iowa Select Farms. So our dad and Carrie called someone from Iowa Select Farms who they said they didn't have an intention to build. And if that's the case, why this paperwork? Why did you buy the land in the first place? And then called another employee who said they didn't know of any plans to build, but it was that person's name on the paperwork with the Iowa DNR. So just very conflicting answers. We also went around to all of our neighbors, even those with hog confinements. We knocked on their door and just let them know what was happening in our neighborhood, and collected phone numbers, email addresses. We started a Facebook group even. And then our last contact with Iowa Select Farms was when we emailed the public relations team. This is who we're finally getting back to us. So that's where they stated in writing that they were doing their due diligence with the Iowa DNR to fill out this paperwork, and they wouldn't be building based on the soil type at that location. But the soil type is available at all times, and they would have known this before they bought the land. So we're relieved to hear this from Iowa Select Farms, but we'll always be worried so long as they own that land. So we have this continued dialogue with family and keep an eye on the DNR website. And then we call the county every week to ask if they've had new applications. And we see that being an ongoing thing for, could be decades. Now I'll pass it back to Carrie.
Okay. So that next slide is just a picture of our Facebook group. We named it after our township. If we go to the next slide, we just want to do a quick summary of our advice for anyone in a similar situation. Definitely watch out for land sales and auctions in your neighborhood because these big companies are buying up land. Make sure you stay in touch with your county and the Iowa DNR because there's a lot of public documents that you have a right to view. Build relationships with your neighbor, absolutely. Don't be afraid to call the pork producer and let them know how you feel about them potentially building. You have every right to tell them how you feel about it. Iowa CCI and SRAP and other organizations provided so much education and advice for us. Highly recommend reaching out to them. And it is a big fight, as other people have said, and can be exhausting. So use your resources and people and delegate tasks. Find out what people's strengths are and lean into those and split things up. It can go a long way. Make sure you keep records of what you're doing and take notes and try and get things in writing when you can. Like an email is good for public or for record later on. And the last thing I'll say is don't be discouraged, and know you will probably get pushback from people. It happens, but don't let people make you feel like you don't have a right to speak up, because your property rights matter. The way you want to farm, you should be able to determine that yourself and not be forced into the factory farm model just because some companies are making it that way or no way. So I think that fight is important, and sharing your voice matters. And after this, we are passing it on to Penny. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Penny Morse. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a longtime member of Iowa CCI, and I live in Osage, which is in Mitchell County. Hi, Howard County. When I moved back in 2008, I became concerned about the hog confinements, and I found out that there are a few tools we can use to help stop or slow them down. It's called the Master Matrix. It is not perfect, but it is something that we can use. The Master Matrix is a scoring system that the county can use to verify that the proposed factory farms meet certain separation distances from residences, businesses, and waterways, that they have a proper manure management plan and manure storage, that they have worker safety and protection plan, a closure plan. There are 44 different categories that the factory farms grade themselves, and they must reach 50%. Now, I'm a teacher, that's not passing, but they only have to meet 50% of the 440 point. They only need 440 points of the possible 880 points. As well, they have to have a certain number of points in 3 different categories. Of the points possible for the air impacts, they need 25%. Of the possible points allotted for water impacts, they need 20%. And of the possible points for community impacts, they need 25%. Now, because the factory farms grade themselves, and it's part of the permitting application for a large factory farm, your county board of supervisors must review the Master Matrix and make sure that they've scored it properly. And then they can deny it, and then they can correct it. There has to be a public hearing. We very rarely see a Master Matrix fail, but don't let your supervisors just accept their scoring. Especially if there's points that are in question, like separation distance from a well or protected areas. There was one factory farm, Iowa Select Farm, that they built on a fen after they tiled it. And I was able to convince the supervisors that they had incorrectly scored it, and they turned it down. Now, I will admit that 2 weeks later, there were about 9 people there from Iowa Select at the supervisors meeting, and they, of course, tweaked their plan and made their 440 points. But it did, the fact that so many people showed up told me that I got their attention. There's a document that's called How to Read the Master Matrix Critically, and it's in the virtual toolkit, and it will help you identify several categories in the Master Matrix that can easily be called into question. If you find discrepancies that take away points as a result of the factory farm receiving less than the required points, then the supervisors can deny the matrix, and they'll have to try again, like they did like Iowa Select did. Now, if the supervisors approve the Master Matrix, they can still vote on whether or not to recommend the entire factory farm permit application to the DNR. They could turn it down. The supervisors send their decision to the DNR, who sends back a draft permit, and then the supervisors have the ability to approve that draft permit or appeal it to the Environmental Protection Commission. And Jan will talk more about that after me. One of the benefits of the master matrix is that the BOS has to hold a public hearing before approving or denying it. And that gives the community a chance to weigh in, especially the people that are most impacted by the factory farm. There was one application for it wasn't by one of the big operators. It was a factory farm by Osage that was going to be on Spring Creek, which is a trout stream, and there were a lot of residents that lived along it. They showed up in force, and I think what happened is the builder swapped land with somebody else, and they built it somewhere else, not on the trout stream. But when a lot of people show up, it can make a difference. When you stand up and call the Board of Supervisors, it sends a message to other people as well, putting out the word that industrial livestock factories are not welcome here and that we're going to pick them apart. It's about fighting back and not letting the factory farms just roll over us all the time. And I have an Iowa Select headquarters like 3 blocks from my house, just down the street, where I don't know if they're a warehouse or what it is, but they have to see my Stop Factory Farm sign every day when they go to work. Showing up at the public hearings matters. But not every county in Iowa utilizes the master matrix. Every year, the supervisors have to pass the master matrix resolution, and they have to submit it to the Iowa DNR between January 1st and January 31st. They can't just do it once. They have to do it more than once, or every year. If they don't, then the county loses any aspect of local control. This is an important issue that your supervisors need to hear from you about. We have put information in the toolkit about this too, and Iowa CCI sends out reminder emails before January. The master matrix is not perfect. It needs a lot of work to actually benefit communities, but it's the tool that we've got right now. So we need to take advantage of any tool that we can. And now Jan is going to lead us into what we can do at the EPC.
Okay, thanks, Penny. Hi, my name is Jan Wan. I use she, her pronouns, and I have only a smartphone, so I'm going to try it. Hold it still. Sorry if it moves. I live in Mason City in Cerro Gordo County, and I've been a member of CCI for maybe 15 years. As Carrie and Maddie mentioned earlier, it helps to learn the process. So the master matrix gives us a way to be heard at the local level. There are things that we can do at the state and federal level, though. So Penny mentioned that the County Board of Supervisors can appeal a draft permit application from the DNR. That puts the responsibility in the state's hands, specifically the hands of the Environmental Protection Commission, or EPC. The EPC is the DNR's oversight board. The 9 commissioners are appointed by the governor. They are not elected. So the County Board of Supervisors will appeal. If they appeal the application, they'll appoint someone to represent the county to the EPC. This person will address the problems of putting a CAFO on the proposed site and use the master matrix and the application as the basis for their appeal. So the county, oops, just a second. The Board of Supervisors has denied the permit, and this person lays out the issues. They can point out distances that are incorrect, institutions that are not taken into consideration, waterways, physical barriers that exist, residences or businesses that are impacted, and just things that local people would know about that piece of land. From these, there the EPC either denies or approves the permit application. If they deny the application, the factory farm is not built. oops, sorry about the thumb. But if they approve the application, we can request that the decision be brought to the DNR director's discretion. The DNR director makes the final decision as to whether the CAFO will be allowed or denied. And this option is currently under review. So if they approve the application, if the DNR director approves that application, that can be disheartening. You know, the people don't want it, the county doesn't want it, the DNR says too bad and approves it. So then what? In the long term, we can work on several things. We can, you know, talk to our neighbors as was suggested. We can test water, test the air, work on getting the state legislators to create a moratorium on factory farms. We can ask the county supervisors to adopt a county ordinance that is a moratorium against new or expanding factory farms. And several counties years ago did do that. They had several counties that had a moratorium, and the state challenged this and they denied the county ordinances. The state does not want local power. So there are other things we can do. You can push state legislators to redo the master matrix, to add stronger rules and regulations to hold polluters accountable. Can always also attend EPC meetings and state your mind. So that's at the state level. And then there's the federal level. You can ask the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, to address the issue. And the EPA is the Federal Oversight Board. So here's kind of how it all can play out. At one point, CCI sued the EPC. Wasn't over a factory farm. I think it was Raccoon River or something. Anyway, they sued the EPC for not doing their job, and which is protecting the environment. The EPA stepped in and said, you can't sue them. So CCI turned around and sued the EPA, and they won. So the EPA gave the EPC 5 years to clean up their act. At the end of the 5 years, we all attended the meeting and they gave a report. Nothing significant was done. So, you know, that hurt. I think the important thing is to listen to each other, to accept other people's ideas, use everyone's unique talent when you're working on something like this. Nurses can address health issues, math people, the demographics, artists can make art, signs, vegans can address cruelty. And I heard something today that kind of touched me. It says, the main weapon we have is each other. The movement includes the entire population. So that's what we're doing. We're fighting for democracy. Next, Caitlin's going to take over. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jan. And thank you everybody who's spoken thus far. So an update here, we've been trying to fight a proposed factory farm in Worth County. And Edith Hanel has been working alongside me and several other CCI members, ICRA members who are Iowa Citizens for Responsible Agriculture of Worth County, and then just other citizens and residents in Worth County who don't want to be abused by the industrial ag industry. So what we've been doing, it's been a couple weeks now. We found out that Summit, as well as Jeff Brecky, who owns Sphinx Inc., had proposed a 4,990 head hog factory just alongside several local businesses near a organic farm, near a wedding venue, 5 miles north of the casino. Let's see, 5 miles south that is. There's a business who owns horses and they give rides to children on these horses for therapeutic purposes. All sorts of fantastic businesses like the organic farm and whatnot. that would be hurt by this proposed confinement. Not only to mention that there's also a water body right nearby. There's a reproductive wildlife area and a wetland and a creek, arguably close. So we've been going to the county supervisors meetings. We went to the public hearing. Like Edith mentioned, we had several people there. The room was overflowing with people, and almost 20 people spoke out against this confinement. However, as we know that the master matrix is not perfect, the county board supervisors did approve the master matrix because the confinement had the points. The factory farm had the points, so the supervisors passed it. However, they do have the ability to vote to recommend or approving or denying the overall permit application to the DNR. Only 2 supervisors were present that day, and one of the supervisors voted to deny and the other voted to approve. Being that it was a tie and not technically approved, it was technically denied, which gave us hope. So we continued to organize. We put up banners just this week to help pull people out to the meeting on Monday morning. We've organized community meetings that'll be coming up. We've made several phone calls. We sent out mailers out to the community members who live around the facility, asking them to come out and make public comment, submitted LTEs, several half-page ads in the papers. And so we've been investing our time and our energy with all these CCI members trying to shut down this proposed confinement. We also had one member who contacted all 150 legislators and is getting responses. So everything we can think of, we are trying to get this thing shut down. One exciting piece of the puzzle is an update that we received tonight. After several weeks of hard work and exhaustion, trying everything we can think of, we actually got notice this afternoon from the county auditor that Summit has withdrawn their permit application for this specific confinement. We actually, one step further, got the confirmation at 6:52 tonight while Edith was speaking on this webinar that it is 100% confirmed Summit has withdrawn their permit application. So after all of our hard work and fighting, the dedication, you CCI members have done it. We have helped stop another proposed factory farm, and it just feels fantastic. Congratulations to you guys and all of your hard work. We know that Summit would not have withdrawn their permit application if it wasn't for you, for all of your hard work, contacting Summit, contacting the Board of Supervisors. We were going to try to push this to the EPC, which on Monday, the Board of Supervisors were going to consider if they wanted to appeal this to the EPC or if they were going to pass it. And we don't even have to go through that process now. So we've learned a lot, and it just feels absolutely phenomenal to have a win on the books and keep Summit out of Worth County to protect our water, protect our people and our community. Just amazing.
I want to add a couple things. We have no blinders on that Summit will be out of our county. We have one win in the war. They have 39 parcels. And so this is a long time effort. Our county our little group started 5 years ago when the first 5 new CAFOs came into the area. And so we went into action. Unfortunately, we learned too late that, that everything was already in progress, but we decided to call ourselves a strike force instead of, we did not organize an organization in the traditional manner, but we decided to call ourselves a strike force, so that when we got wind of additional CAFOs coming into the county, we took some steps that we had already taken. So we already had an idea of what it is that we needed to do. In our particular situation, the Board of Supervisors they have, I think, 40, I can't remember if it's 40 or 60 days to announce this. They gave us 14 days. And so, of course, one person, just the chair, was really interested in pursuing this, but because we had kind of a well-oiled strike force with a list of do this, do this, do this, do this, we were able to do some of that. And so early on, we were sort of like wandering in the wilderness. We didn't know exactly what to do. So we did exactly what, we just did what we thought to do. And so as we've moved, this is our third fight, we had a much stronger idea of what to do. And we were grateful this time that CCI was able to help us. I also can't impress enough that we had money in the bank. We had done some fundraising from our core members, so that with a gift from CCI allowed us to put half-page ads in 3 different places. That's not cheap. So this is not a cheap endeavor. And so it really takes not only the time and effort of people, but it also takes a lot of money. The other thing that we had going for us is one of the people in our group had worked for Summit, and he had contact with some of the people in Summit. And so that was extremely helpful in guiding us to what made Summit more sensitive. And like we said, we are under no illusion. We have won a battle in a long war. So, but anyway, we're energized. We're gonna celebrate our little win and feel good and pat ourselves on the back. So
that's right. And great reminder, you know, just because we won this one doesn't mean that these parcels of land that have been bought up in Worth County aren't the next target. So all the more reason to come back stronger, more organized together, and use these experiences that we've built to continue fighting. In order to get to this point, which helped add to this success, we did many of the things that everyone's been talking about on this webinar, you know, contacted the local citizens, contacted the county supervisors, got all the information that we could, talked with the DNR, wanted to push things to the EPC, but luckily we don't have to, and then did everything that we could, like Edith said. So it's just really, really cool. So great job, Worth County. Woohoo! With that, I will pass it off to Devin.
Okay, yeah, how do I follow that? First of all, amazing job to Edith and all the CCI members and Caitlin up in that area. I've had butterflies since I found out that that happened because as many of us know, that fighting factory farms is hard and it's a long battle. And tying into that, something that we've noticed is hurting the fight, or not necessarily, for now, we're going to fix it, is not finding out that factory farms are planning to build in areas until they've already had the first few steps taken. So what we thought of to combat that is starting our own kind of task force, like Edith was just talking about, our strike force. So we have 6 different DNR field offices in Iowa. What we can do to get ahead of the factory farm applications is call into our field offices. So I live in Johnson County. That means I would call the Washington field office and ask them for any new manure management plans, as well as any new factory farm applications. You can call and do that every single week. You can also call your county auditor and ask them about land transfers. So that's like something up in, oh, I'm going to get the county wrong. There's so many counties tonight. Up in the northwest part of Iowa. When you see like these companies buying up a bunch of land, you can kind of track that. So both of those things would help us get in front of the factory farms and hopefully give us a little bit more time to organize and get that people power cooking in our counties. So with that, we actually have a virtual packet that Lisa, I believe, is going to drop a link in the chat for. You'll see when you open it up that there is a highlighted part here. That will take you to an Excel sheet. So if you're interested in making those calls and you want it to be part of our coordinated effort with that, you can just put your name in there and we'll contact you after the meeting to set that up and then kind of decide with everyone how that will look based on frequency, things like that. Something important to mention is if you're looking for a way to get involved and you're not in a county that has very many factory farm applications, this is a great way. So you don't have to live in the specific county to get the information. So I believe the virtual packet link went in there. We'll also send it out through email tomorrow, so you won't be able to escape it. When you see the virtual packet, go to File in the top left corner and then click Download to save it on your device so you never lose it. Along with the sign up here, we also will have a recording of the webinar that we're in right now, in case you want to go back and watch it. We'll also have the slides that you can look at. And then there's links with descriptions for tools that the DNR has that we often use against factory farms. And some sample LTEs in case you want to write your papers, as well as some news articles that we love reading. So with that, I'll pass it off to Julie, and then please stick around after because we'll have the option for Q&A.
Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Julie Dunn, and oh my God, I am so excited for Worth County that I can't believe it. It is wonderful news. It's wonderful news. But anyway, I am a CCI member, and I have been since 2016. I joined when I retired and had the time to fully see and understand what was happening in my own community and the small world around me. There was a very controversial CAFO construction application here in Hardin County. CCI showed us how to organize an opposition, and we did eventually defeat that application happily. Yes, it does happen. I came to realize the scope of the issues facing us, and I knew I had to spend my time fighting for my grandchildren's future here in Hardin County. I witnessed the power of people fighting back, and that changed my life. So I want to talk about what I see in my backyard now and what Iowa could look like in the future. I live in Hardin County, home of Bruce Rastetter of Summit Ag and all of his little tentacles out there, one of the top 4 producers of factory farmed hogs in Iowa. We are also, unfortunately, the headquarters of big time player Iowa Select Farms, owned by Jeff and Deb Hansen. I live in a county that has been overrun by factory farms, and I've seen firsthand the damages corporate polluters have done to our communities and our environment. That picture next to me there, that is, oops, that is a picture of Lower Pine Lake State Park. It's pretty disgusting. Since factory farms have started dominating the countryside, our beach here on Lower Pine Lake, this is just down the path from there, has been unswimmable at least half of the summer, year after year. This is not unique to my community and this state park. It is a statewide problem. Lower Pine Lake actually drains into the Iowa River, which is on the list of impaired waters. Given all that, I know it's easy to lose hope. It happens to me more often than I like to admit, but we must keep fighting. Progress comes in feet, not miles, 1 foot in front of the other, and we will get there. We're in this fight for the long haul. We can rebuild Iowa into a place where there is opportunity for sustainable agriculture and a healthy environment and diverse cultures, room for all of our people at the table. We must change the rhythm, the beating heart of Iowa, and make it a place where fear and division and the power of greed are no longer the guiding principles in our capital in Des Moines and in some of our communities. Change needs to come from us, the real stakeholders here, from you and I. We're all stakeholders. The Iowa we deserve would have clean water for drinking and recreation. Our beaches would be safe for swimming, the fish safe to eat. We would not have to worry about the safety of the water that we drink from our kitchen faucets. The Iowa we deserve would be a place where rural communities and family farmers thrive. Local businesses could survive in Iowa's small towns, and small and mid-sized farms could replace corporate operations. Farmers would be supported in their transition to sustainable practices and diverse crops. Practices that also support workers, a healthier food system, and the environment. Our vision for clean water and a healthy environment comes with a roadmap. We can do this when enough people understand there is a way to push progress and remove the stranglehold of big money in politics and its power over us. But we need to join forces and fight together. There is no other way. We know that holding factory farms accountable for the damage to our state is crucial. We must share our real lived stories and make sure our narrative, not the narrative of factory farms, not their false narrative. We need to push our narrative into the spotlight. We must elect and uplift political fighters who support our vision and help us win higher fines and accountability for factory farm polluters. We need to work to elect decision makers who will push a moratorium on factory farms. Together, we can build a place where young people and families want to stay and live the rest of their lives. By sticking together and fighting for what's right, we can build a strong, resilient, rural and urban communities. Let's be realistic. It's no secret that this work is hard. Wins against corporate polluters often seem small. We don't win every fight, but when we do win, we celebrate, like tonight. We are not always heard on the state level, but we can be part of a community that stays in the fight. Because if people stay silent and don't engage, where will we be in 5 to 10 years? CCI is in it for the long haul. We have been fighting big ag since the 80s and factory farms since the 90s. And again, being realistic, we all get overwhelmed, tired, depressed sometimes because of the ongoing work. But the best thing when it does happen is knowing that in organizations of committed and compassionate people, there's always someone who will help, encourage, and support you. We are not alone. And members of CCI will always work to uplift one another and our work against factory farms. People who are most impacted by factory farms and farm policy failures should be the ones crafting policies and solutions that protect our food system, our workers, farmers, communities, and the environment. We need to expand our movement to build our power across the state to kick big ag, big polluters, and factory farms out and let a new generation of responsible family farmers in. Your membership helps support the movement and continues to push our vision of people and planet first. Together, we are growing our power to build the Iowa we deserve. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you aren't really a stakeholder, because you are, and your voice matters. So I'm asking, if you are not already a member, please consider joining us tonight to help to make Iowa the state it should be, a place where people want to live, not leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So yeah, I think there's some links in the chat. If you're not a member already, you can sign up, join us, build power across the state. And with that, we'll open it up for Q&A. I'll stop sharing. Go ahead and drop your questions in the chat. Also, if we'd like, you can come off mute and give all of the speakers tonight a big round of applause, make some noise.
Yeah.
Great job, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah, and feel free to drop any questions in the chat. I don't know if we have any that have stacked up because I couldn't see anything while we were talking. Yeah. Cool. Again, for while people are thinking of really good questions to ask, we have the virtual packet. It'll get sent around. Please hold on to it. And please sign up to make calls to the DNR field offices. And then also think about calling your county auditors if you can.
Oh, I have something. Oh, I do have something. We just had 2 public hearings on CAFO matrix revisions in Hardin County. It was yesterday morning. I want people to keep an eye out for Summit blocking rural roads to put their manure hose across the road if there's not a culvert. Watch for it, report it if it is not permitted. And when I said something about it at the public hearing, Kent Krause said that didn't happen. And then I told him I had the sheriff's report. And so he's angry, but he'll get over it. You know, got the report. All right, Nick?
I can second that happened in our county too, Julie. I just heard a story of the sheriff getting called on someone putting up road closed signs. So yes, it absolutely does happen.
Yeah, call your county sheriff and make sure that they have a permit, and they best be having it right in there with them, in a vehicle with them.
One last chance for any questions or any alerts. Oh yeah, yeah, definitely run for county or state office to increase effectiveness, for sure. That's important.
I know it. Oh, I'm muted. Let's see. No, I'm not. I used to do the legislative forums before they stopped responding to my request for it. And Waylon Brown, my state senator, was at one. And I think at this one, I had my map of all the CAFOs in Mitchell County and how much manure, and I put a whole thing together. And I asked him if he would support a moratorium on new CAFOs after I presented my information. I think there were like 5 cattlemen standing behind me. And he screamed and he pounded the desk and spit was flying and his neck got all red. And he even embarrassed some of the other Republicans there. I just made a very quiet request. Would you support a moratorium? A simple yes, no answer would have been sufficient. But he was putting on a performance for all the cattlemen that were standing behind me. I had been looking at my map. But we need to figure out ways to hold them accountable wherever they are. And I don't know if there's another proposal that's going to be put forward in the next session to try to have a moratorium or not, but it gives us a talking point with them.
Thanks, Penny. I see a really good question in the chat from Chris. Chris said, I'm curious about the laborers who work on these factory farms and the conditions they face. Do you have a sense for the demographics of laborers, and do they typically live on site or nearby? I assumed they might be migrant workers, which is a correct assumption. And are you organizing with those folks? Lisa, do you want to talk about that a little bit? I know that there's been work to organize those migrant workers a lot around Poweshiek County. There was some recent work, but sadly the person who did that has just passed on a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I think Lisa would know a little bit more than I do.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost a beautiful fighter a couple weeks ago who was doing this work on his own, working with workers inside one of the biggest chicken factories in Iowa. So we press on, we keep going, right? And we work with allies who are going to work with, who specialize in working with workers. We have done this at different times, depending on our staff capacity, in terms of working with folks who have essentially been abused inside these systems, inside these actual buildings, physical buildings. These are not good jobs. They're not good jobs. They're not fair jobs. People don't get good health care. People aren't getting treated right. People don't get fair wages for the incredibly intensive labor that it takes to do this work, to work inside an ag system. So that's a broad statement that you all know this already. This is not anything new. I think we need to continue to build up the infrastructure of folks, organizations that can do this kind of work, that can build trust with workers. There's a lot of issues there, I think, in terms of being able to build that trust when, jobs are important, and when that's what you got going for you, it's hard to turn away from that, from your employer, and talk to an organizer who might say, maybe there's something different, maybe there's something better if we all band together. There's a lot of fear there that can happen, and that's totally understandable. So it takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of work, and a lot of trust building. And so I do see that it's a huge part of the puzzle. It's a huge piece of the puzzle that we have to talk about and that we have to figure out. And so yeah, I don't know if that exactly answers your question, Chris. See, Julie put a response into the chat as well. But we have to keep at it, and we need more folks that are willing to have the conversations, and the tough conversations, and provide the support to folks to do the tough work of fearless truth telling.
And in Mitchell County, I was out eating the other night, and someone pointed out there's like these South African workers that they're bringing over. I know the co-op brought some over. They even bought a house in my neighborhood where they live, but there's a farmer that's also got some, the South Africans are white, and they speak English. So they're somehow they get visas for these workers. They are to come and work in Mitchell County. And also when I go to the Cora, I think it's a bunch of Iowa Select farms. They've moved a house in by one of their big confinements. I imagine that would probably be mostly immigrant workers that they've got living there right by the confinement. They moved in a big 2-story house for their workers to live in that work in a bunch of nearby confinements. And for some of the people in my community, like the hog confinement jobs are, they pay them. They're supporting them. So I mean, they just look at them as a job, but they are bringing in, I noticed, out of country workers to work in some of the confinements. I don't know if that's happening in other communities, but and Puerto Ricans, but they're mostly working in the factories. Mitchell County is bringing in Puerto Ricans to work in our industry here that's short of workers. I don't know if any of them they probably wouldn't go to the factory farms, but we have a shortage of workers kind of in general. I imagine the factory farms do too. Iowa Select advertises, like I said, they're right down the street. They advertise what a great place they are to work for, what great benefits they have.
Thanks for that information, Penny. Yeah, so it is everywhere. Like I just saw the word exploitation, it is everywhere. So hopefully we can continue to uplift organizations that do work with migrant labor, and make sure that people are protected if they do choose to work at factory farms. Are there any other questions? And if there are,
doing this.
Yeah, thank you for speaking. So yeah, with that, we can wrap it up. Thank you to the people who stayed a little bit late. We'll hopefully be seeing you around, and hopefully see you on that call list. I'll keep bumping it. It'll go in your email. It'll probably go in a social media post. So thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you to the speakers who worked so hard to put this together. We definitely appreciate you all.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Appreciate you
Thank
all.
Bye, Dad.